Are you ready for the divine feminine revolution? Let's get vulnerable and go deep.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Divine Feminine Revolution podcast. I've got one of my favorite people, Liane Elle, here, and we've got a really special episode because we've actually worked together. And so we're really going to let you kind of behind the scenes on what it's like to do this kind of pleasure activism work. I'll just pass it over to you. And I'd love to hear like a brag intro. So can you just brag a
Ooh.
little bit about yourself and how amazing you are?
Ooh. Yeah. Okay. So I brag that I was raised as a Jehovah's Witness, which is a very high control religion, patriarchal cult. And when I was 29, I left all of that behind and it was very dramatic. It included, a divorce and a shunning and subsequent PTSD from the loss of pretty much my entire worldview. And I brag that that was really the catalyst for me to step into my divine feminine power. And I was through a journey of sexual liberation and sexual empowerment, both personally and then later professionally as well. That is really what helped me to realize just how much power there actually is in our bodies, in our sexuality, in our pleasure. And I brag that now that's my day job. I brag that I left behind, the corporate world. I used to be a fashion buyer and I also worked at a sex toy company, which was really fun. But I brag that I've really left all of that behind to focus on my work, which is really helping powerful women to tap into these resources that we've been so separated from, very much by patriarchy, amongst other things, and to reclaim that for ourselves. And in doing so, create a life that we truly, truly love, that we can own as ours. And I think that that's really what my own personal journey has been. And so that's what I love to help other women do. I brag.
That was a brag because that kind of journey, it takes so much like time and energy and to just
Mhm.
be able to so succinctly encapsulate that is really powerful. So I just want to thank you so much for being on here. And I just feel so grateful that you came into my life because you really helped me kind of integrate a layer to really come from a place of pleasure. And so that has been like to this day, like one of the most powerful changes and helping me kind of fully embody the divine feminine as well. And I do think that as women, we have so much programming, whether it's religion or culture or your family system or trauma, we have so much like conditioning from the patriarchy. I go live and I hear myself say, "Hey guys." I'm like, no, that's
Yes.
the patriarchy. It's like coming out of my mouth. I didn't even mean
Yep.
to say, you know? So I shouldn't say that, although it flips out. I just want to like really brag on you as well, having like firsthand experienced your work. Like you can hold such immaculate space for people. We're obsessed with human design on this podcast. So you're like a typical projector in that you can just like really zero in on what's going on, highlight that, reflect it back, transmute it. It's been so powerful. And I think one of the things that really sticks with me personally in our work together was that whole idea of making yourself like the heroine of your story, particularly if you've had trauma, especially sexual trauma. And that was such a powerful practice to just do that really deep identity work and meaning making and healing. So I'm just wondering if you could share like a little bit about your own story, kind of using that lens.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I just got full body chill as I heard you say that. And so interesting to hear you actually reflect that because when I started in my thinking about my coaching brand and all of that, so I did a lot of reading and thinking about this idea of the hero or the heroine's journey. And even though it's not something I speak to, directly, it is something that I think is actually very much a part of my work. And so yeah, that I guess in terms of my own life, I was very much the consummate good girl. Very, very, oh my goodness, such a people pleaser. I got married when I was virginally, even though virginity is obviously a construct, like in terms of that construct, very much concerned with just being very pure and good. And my entire worldview was dominated by this idea of the masculine divine, right? And that was always something outside of me and something that I had to submit to and obey and just sort of like hope for the best because, just so far out of my control. There was nothing I could really do to have any of that inside of me. And so it's been quite a journey for me to see it this way. But what I realized about a year ago is that I've actually now fully claimed responsibility for manifesting the way that my marriage and everything that followed that ended. And I think that was really that sort of the beginning of that heroine's journey where, stepping out and going on this quest of discovery. And even though at the time I felt that these were things that were happening to me, like my husband had 2 horrible affairs and there was just so much destruction and loss that I very much felt like the victim of that. In hindsight, I see that as this beautiful thing that I now believe I actually divinely manifested, orchestrated so that I could go on this journey and so that I could get free and actually live the life that I want to live, that my soul wants to live. And so, so I guess that was like sort of when you think of the heroine's journey, it's like coming out and then beginning to go through all these stages of self-discovery. I almost immediately started working at this marketing agency for sex toys, which was very strange to me as I'd been
The foreshadow.
Yes. Yeah. And I always say it was like a baptism by fire into the world of sex positivity and sexual liberation. And I learned so much so quickly on the job about sexuality that I'd never owned a vibrator. I'd always self-pleasured, but that was my little secret, right? I didn't tell anyone about that. And then as I went through that, and then even from there deciding, I really want to travel. I want to experience my freedom that I now have more fully. That led to a whole other journey, but essentially including trauma healing, EMDR, all of the things. And then finally deciding that I actually want to do this as my job. And that's when I did a sex, love, and relationship certification. And as they say, it's all history from there.
Well, there's so much there. I love how you're reframing the divorce and the affairs as kind of like your liberation point. And I think that is so true, that trauma really can be our liberation point. And that's some of the work that we did together. I hired you, I guess it was about this time last year.
It was.
And it was during like the eclipses and the solstice. You totally Gaia was like, Liane, we're gonna give you the gift of being a goddess. We're gonna put Liane on your path. And it was so powerful. And I did your group program initiation and I did one-on-one sessions with you. And just to give everybody who's out there listening a little preview. So was it Thailand? Where were you at the time?
Vietnam. I was in Vietnam.
Yes. So you were in Vietnam. And so there's the time difference. And so I would put my little family to bed and then I would be like exhausted from the day, but I would like show up like, I think it was like 10:30 of my time at night. And we would have these like little secret discussions. It's so amazing because, my background as a trauma therapist, like I had done some trauma work for my own stuff, but it was so powerful to have more like the coacher, healer, activist lens on it. Because I just remember telling you things that were like, either shameful or embarrassing or just like old and weird, like when you go into someone's like full sexual history, I can tell you as a therapist, I've heard lots of people, there's some weird shit in there, right? And I just remember like sessions where we're going to be like giggling and crying, and, I just really, and I can cram so much in a session, right? So I was like, and this, and this, and this, and this. But it was such a powerful awakening for me because I had spent so much on business coaching. Like I said, I had done some previous trauma work, but it just felt like very like indulgent to hire a sex and relationship coach, and so I just think it was such a powerful experience. I'd love to touch on some of the growth there, but anything you want to share? I know it was a big leap, even though I had been in the pleasure communities, to hire like a pussy coach.
Yes, I was just going to talk about that. Yeah, I was going to say. So that was last year, this time, I was really focusing on that so much. This whole idea of I'm your pussy coach and let's connect with your pussy and tap into her voice and her wisdom and reconnect with her, like reestablish that relationship, which so many of us have been in so many different ways, whether it's religion or trauma or whatever, been separated from this power center in our bodies. And I remember that's actually what you signed up for. And I think they were like, I offered 2 different packages, and the one was like healing and the other one was more pleasure. I think you went for the healing one. I think you came back and you actually signed up for the other one as well. I think you did both. Yes, now I'm remembering. And it was just so beautiful because you had been in these pleasure spaces, but this was very much like focused on reconnecting with that very sacred part of yourself. And yeah, I remember one of our first sessions, there was the whole like bath cave exploration that came out from that. And so, I don't want to speak on your
Yeah.
behalf, but I'd love for you to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I have some like interesting like priestess past lives like around like caves, and so that was a very like mystical kind of symbolism for me. But at the time I was really like hardcore into doing baths, and I had this little crappy bathtub, so like I couldn't even get all the way under the water.
Yeah.
But I was in it every day anyway, and I would put my oils in, and I would actually just turn the lights off completely and just be in the darkness.
Mm.
And almost like a sensory deprivation thing, just to kind
Yes.
of like clear my mind.
Yes.
And then I believe right after that, I manifested a hot tub, which
Yes.
replaced the tiny
Yes.
bathtub as, the cauldron of creativity, you can call it.
Yes.
The
Yes.
water element. So
Mhm.
that was like really powerful. But yeah, it was just such a sort of like powerful like priestess activation. And I think for me, and I think people can relate to this. If you are friends or connected with a big community of coaches, we do our brags, we do our
Mhm.
marketing, we share our numbers. And if you are like me and you have 5,000 coaches who are incredible, amazing women on your feed, it can be kind of sensory overload when people are having these amazing experiences, right? And it can be triggering. And so I think the same thing with the sex and relationship coaches. Like, I remember seeing posts where someone had 27 orgasms and just being like, as a mom, boss,
Yeah.
like, where do you have the time for 27 orgasms?
Remember that.
What's the refractory period on that?
I remember you saying exactly that in one of our sessions. Yeah. Yeah. And so I know now I'm asking you a question because I just can't help it. But yeah, I was going to say, so how would you say that the work we did together, how did that sort of reframe your lens on that or your take or
Yeah.
understanding of that?
Well, it kind of goes into my story a bit, which is just, again, the good girl stuff like you, but also combined with some like pretty hardcore overachiever. And so at that point, I was really invested in coaching and like building this like alternative business. And I think I was so focused on like results and the outcome, creating this new lifestyle
Mhm.
and wanting to pay my coaching bill.
Yes, I remember that.
It was a little bit, dry, I guess. I could say it was stressful. And like when I think of stress, I think of dry, right? And so then to hire a pussy coach like felt very like indulgent. And like she told me she wanted her own coach. Hello, you've already spent, I won't even say the amount, but crazy amounts of money on coaching. Can you forget the business just for a second? Let's work on your power portal.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I remember that. And I remember that it's like she came through with some pretty hard like boundaries and requests. And yeah, there was like so much that once you connected to her, and especially when you were using that sort of that bathtub cave time for yourself and with the water elements, I remember like so many messages were coming through and downloads from her with regards to, the direction you should take. And one of them I remember was specifically one of the things we came to in our work was actually decreasing the amount of coaching you were doing with all the other coaches as well. And eventually with me too. So yeah, that's something I remember as well. And it's so funny. As I heard you speak about the bathtub, the manifesting the hot tub and the bathtub, the small bathtub, it's so strange because one of my coaches, not one of my coaches, someone I coached this year, she's also a coach. She actually had the exact same thing with a really small cramped bathtub in her home and how she loved baths and the water element is like her thing. And then in our work together, what we actually ended up working on was her manifesting her dream home. And right when we ended, she
What
manifested,
film that was. It's like spectacular. Yeah.
right? And yeah. So that actually, that's a whole tangent of another kind, but around desire and manifesting. But that the bathtub in that house now is huge. And it's so spacious, it's like a swimming pool, and she gets to spend so much time in there. And I was just thinking, it's really strange, like this parallel between like when I work with people, suddenly they go from small bathtubs to like bigger hot tubs or bathtubs. I don't know if there's something in that, but it's interesting.
Yeah, and I think for me, it's like the piece of just because I had hit these like sort of milestones, jumped through these hoops, hit these successful things. Like a lot of times they were anticlimactic and they weren't like actually that pleasurable because I was so exhausted from trying to get from A to B. And so I feel like the less is more approach like really worked, and like really just focusing on like right now I have everything I want and everything I need if I just realize.
Yes, if I let myself take it in.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah, and, like, getting more into that receptive mode and not, like, running or, too much or sort of striving, I guess. So,
Yeah, driving.
y
Yeah.
yeah, that was so powerful, and I can remember if any of y'all out there have partners who have not approved of your financial investments, I think that's pretty relatable. I had one of those, and I think it started with like a BJ class that I had gone to for women, which if you struggle with that, I think that's super something to invest in because that yielded really good results. And then that pretty much reframed. He was like, listen, anything that will increase your sexual satisfaction, like I'm happy for you to invest in.
Mhm.
No, I think that was really great. I think they understand maybe the business coaching part less, but that really revitalized, particularly after being like a mom and, like delivering through natural birth and just
Yeah.
like having the mom boss stress vibes. Like
Mhm.
that was just like a really powerful way to activate her voice and let her really communicate directly. And like you said, once we got her said, "Hey, we wanna know what you think." She had a lot to say.
She had a lot to say in so many different areas. Yeah. Yeah. And I actually, something that I wanted to also touch on that came up as well was the photo shoot that you did
Yeah.
and the whole like visibility process around that. Is there anything you want to talk about that? Because that was also sort of related to your partner, your husband, and your role as a mother and navigating all of that.
Yeah. So in the course of I had manifested, like, a good little amount of money, and so I was, like, new rich. So I had a lot of disposable income that came all at once. Universe, by the way, like, another one of those rounds of income, please.
Yeah. Thanks.
Kind of like spoiling myself. And so I had actually had some like therapy clients over the years who had done these kind of like body positivity, like empowering boudoir shoots and, had shared some of the photos with me. And it was just a really powerful experience for them. I had some photographers who were also healers who really like that was their dream was to like want to show everyone they're beautiful, even if people had like a visual defect or, they had something they were insecure about, like still like really showing them that they were beautiful.
Beautiful.
So I had a few experiences, vicariously through other people about that. I remember doing like my first photo shoot for online and also like hitting my highest weight. And so just really also like a weight I never thought I would kind of get to.
Okay.
And so that was probably a year or two before that, but, that was, like, the first photo shoot. And then the photo shoot that I invested in, and it was a very expensive it was coaching prices, expensive photo shoot.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it was very empowering, and it was interesting because I was, like, trying to make it like a Valentine's Day gift. It was right around Valentine's Day, and so it's kinda, like, secretive about it, and FYI, if you have an intuitive partner, whether they're a man or a woman, don't try to hide things from them because they will sense it and they will feel it and they will be like, what the app is going on? And so there was like a little bit of that. Like he could sense something was going on and I was like being a little bit like elusive around it. And it was interesting because we were breaking out of a lot of good girl sort of conditioning through our work together. And so I did this photo shoot, which was not, I mean, it was like bathing suit level coverage,
Yeah.
but still, it was very vulnerable to go. And, and his reaction when I think I told him about it before I actually got the photo album. And he was like very not okay with it. In the sense of like that it was a male photographer. It was actually a husband and wife. And I felt very safe and it was fine. And he was like,
Mhm. Mhm.
it was done very, with respect and all that sort
Yeah.
of stuff. But for him in his mind, he was like, WTF, right?
Yes.
And so here was this thing that I spent a lot of money on. I also was kind of using it double duty for some. If you ever see pictures of me with like heavy makeup, that's probably the photo shoot. Like never wear the makeup. And I actually have eyebrows in the photo.
Yeah, they were very dark. Yeah.
Eyebrows. That was probably one of those photos. And it's kind of funny because I'll put them. A lot of my coaching banners also have some of those photos in there. And interesting, like just synchronicity. I use Ember Renee to do a lot of my photo covers. She's an awesome designer. And I remember for one of them, she had put me with these big white wings. And I was like, I don't know. I mean, that's kind of feel cool to see myself with angel wings, but they just weren't the right wings. And I kind of told her no. And the next thing I know, like a week or two later, I'm at this photo shoot and they put me in these huge white wings.
Yeah. And
I'm like, yeah, she is psychic. She's like a psychic designer. And I'm like, well, I guess you were right about this wing. But it was very interesting because here I was like, oh, I did this for you, but really I did it for me, so
Yeah.
like double duty, going to give this to my husband. And the pictures turned out like amazing. But he really struggled with it for a bit. And it was like, oh, I'm a bad girl,
Yeah. 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 It did bring up
that girl side of me, but it's not in this case.
Yeah. Yeah. It definitely brought up like, I remember both before the photo shoot and after us you really navigating as a business owner, a divine feminine activist, and as someone in the sort of pleasure priestess realm, you wanting to find your own expression of what that looks like within your life and within who you really are. And I thought that was just such a beautiful exploration of finding the sweet spot of, allowing your sensuality and your seductive powers to be seen, but also in a way that felt really good and aligned with the other roles in your life and finding that balance for yourself. And I think this is something I really like to speak to sometimes is for me, the difference between sexual liberation and sexual empowerment, and how, although I truly believe sexual liberation is like incredible, some people misunderstand that as meaning like, for instance, if you leave a marriage or a cult or whatever it is, and you go on this wild exploration journey and you are perhaps having, lots of casual sex and doing all of the things. I mean, I totally did that. I love that. That can be really liberating and empowering, but perhaps that is not actually empowering for you. For some people that might be, and for some people it might not be, but it doesn't mean that you're not liberated and you're not empowered if you don't want to do that. You can be completely single, having no sex with anyone, and you can be sexually empowered and liberated. And so I just love in that way as well, like sort of finding that sweet spot of, am I a pleasure goddess and a seductress if I don't like only portray that in my marketing? I just found that really interesting, and how you did find that sweet spot that felt right to you, while honoring like all parts of who you are.
Yeah. And I'm reflecting, it's so funny we're doing this like a year later.
Yeah.
Growth, because I believe I had been doing the podcast for a while, but about that time when I first started with you, with when the podcast went live. And so that was particularly because I had been so much more, as we're talking today, personal and vulnerable. It felt, and there was no like restrictions. And I don't know who necessarily is listening. So, hey, if you're listening to the podcast, send me a message. I would love to chat with you,
You have no idea.
Big like visibility pop that I went through at that time. And I'm actually going through another one because we've now put all the podcast episodes on YouTube. So there's a Divine Feminine Revolution podcast YouTube channel. And then that also feels, because YouTube can reach even more people. Oh my God, if people binge watch, they're going to know everything about me.
Yeah.
And having like invested in a lot of pleasure-based business coaches, a lot of them do use like very like gorgeous, revealing pictures of themselves as marketing. And I had my own trauma being a teenager of the 90s with the advent of the internet and this like highly sexually charged kind of exploitive time. Like I had my own internet trauma around that. And so it felt like even things that weren't like sexual, specifically just being on the internet and people seeing me like felt very triggering. And I just remember you being like, it's safe. They can't find you. Like they don't know who.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think also you were balancing like your identity as a therapist as well. And
Yes.
that world is so regulated and sort of insulated. Yeah. It's very patriarchal.
Talk about yourself. Like
you're not allowed to say anything, right?
So I'm a therapist. I've always talked about, I'm always sharing who I am in session. Yeah, sharing it with the world is a whole different story.
And in that way, I really think like something like as simple as a photo shoot can actually turn into this like deep shadow work process and like trauma healing process. And that's literally what happened because we were like back in the 90s, we journeyed through so many phases of your lives because it brought up a lot, right? And yeah, I just think that is what's so powerful about like even visibility work and where they intersect. Do you feel safe to be seen? Do you feel safe to be sexy and seen? Those are actually big questions that we particularly as if you're a coach or some kind of public if you have a public persona as a change maker, that's really something to think about and often that you need to work through in the process of being able to market your business and your gift.
So I'm going to turn it around. Like, what's that journey been like for you? Because I know you've done that. Yeah.
Yeah. Such a good question. Yeah. Because so nobody's ever asked me that before. So thank you for asking. I think I would say that there were two main challenges for me when it comes to visibility online, maybe even three. So the first one is that I never grew up actually being allowed to have access to social media. And so obviously it sort of did come in when I was a teenager, but I didn't have a phone and I wasn't on social media. I wasn't on Facebook. So I never developed that sort of like natural affinity for like things like MySpace or Facebook where people were just like so excited to be posting about their lives. And so that kind of visibility has always felt quite foreign to me. And even when I had, my own personal Instagram account, I would very rarely post on there. It was not something that was like natural to me. And then the other two challenges were definitely the big one was around body image issues, having been like a serial dieter all my life and, just all of the things, thanks patriarchy again. And then definitely being like also at my personal heaviest at the time that I started my business. And it's been sort of continuous from there. And my business has grown, so have I. It's like, I hold more. And so that was definitely a big hurdle for me to get through. So once I was like, okay, we're going to do this visibility thing, then I was like, oh, but now people are going to see my body. So I remember there have been a few times where I've done it's actually been really interesting because I have found so much healing by being visible with my body on social media. And I think there's been some similarities for you as well. I remember there was one picture you posted in like a swimsuit and you got so many comments and so many women saying like how much they loved and appreciated you modeling. And so for me, I remember there were these key points where I would make these very cathartic posts actually about how I felt about my body, my history with my body. And sort of, there was one in particular at the beginning of my journey where I just made a post. I was like, look, if I don't show you how my body looks now, I'm going to be trying to hide it all the time. So here I am. This is me. This is my body. And, this is what we're dealing with. So from now on, I can post whatever I want because we all know this is what I look like. And that was so cathartic to actually do that. But in doing that, I was like, okay, well, now I need to take some actual photos of my body to go with this thing I've written. And that was the first time I did a selfie sort of photo shoot with myself and a remote clicker and my cell phone.
I still need to order my remote clicker. That's on the Christmas list.
It's life-changing. It's been
y'all.
It's like the one I bought was like $5. Like it was so affordable. And that was actually the very first photo shoot I did with, I literally had some plants and I was in my apartment. I had dirty hair. I hadn't showered and I was like, right, let's take some photos. Let's just do it. Because in that moment, I have the power to like the drive to do it. So I just rode that wave. And to this day, I still use some of those photos. I saw myself in a completely new way taking those photos of myself. I think I was like, had a bra on in some of them and some of them I was topless. And then since then, I've done numerous photo shoots like that of myself that I use for my business. And each time I think I actually fall in love with my body a little bit more. So yeah, that was one part of visibility. And then the last thing I would say was just actually getting on social media and actually putting myself out there as I've had so many different titles. They're all made up.
Yeah.
We all make up these titles, right? But let's say like a sexual empowerment coach. That was really, really scary to me because I am like shunned Jehovah's Witness, which means that there are a lot of people out there who definitely would be absolutely shocked and horrified and probably say a lot of really nasty things about seeing me taking on that identity and half naked photos and whatever. And so I really had to work through the fact that that could be a possibility. I put some safeguards in place, but at the same time, I had a small breakdown the day that I was going to go like actually start my Instagram account. And particularly around my father, there was a lot of fear around that, our relationship being jeopardized. And so, yeah, I had to do a lot of healing. And that's why I say like this visibility thing is really shadow work. And so, yeah, thank you for asking me that because it's really helped me also clarify like there's been actually so many aspects of being seen and sexy that I've had to work through as well in starting my business.
That's really powerful the way you say that. And it sort of brings out the struggle for me in the sense of being a feminist, and like being so aware of like objectification and how damaging like it's associated with all of the mental health issues for women, like self-harm, substance abuse, depression, anxiety actually makes you less smart because it taxes your cognitive load. They did this experiment where they put women in bikinis and then they couldn't do math, basically. I mean, that's not exactly what happened, but my version of it.
As you say that, I feel that. I'm like, oh, I felt that.
Yeah, so their ability to perform math went down based on being like, so revealed. And so I was sort of struggled with this traditional thing and, having helped so many women like heal from sexual trauma. I'm like, is it liberating for women to be putting, like naked pictures to sell their products, and do you have to do that to be able to sell your stuff? And I think what I came to is just the whole thing of like, is it for your pleasure? Are you really doing it like the way that you described it was this like really powerful, embodied, raw, real moment? And then, the world gets the privilege of sharing in that moment with you?
Yeah.
Or are you doing it like as a means to an end, as you objectifying yourself to make sales or to get followers or, whatever the payoffs are for that? And so I think I had actually a business channeled session called The Rapture with Jessica Riverson. She said, your body holds so much energy and power in it. Like they're telling me to don't just do the like talking headshots, like show your body because it's activating people. And, some of the calls that we're on, people sometimes will be naked or, and I can remember, I'm thinking of one person in particular. I'll have her on a podcast, maybe she'll share about it. But she was like a curvy woman and she would come naked to the calls and her body was very activating in the sense of it was just super powerful to see her. And I can remember that as well, having gone to like festivals, music festivals and whatnot, where people were like, naked or practically naked or in costume or whatever. It was so like one of those breakthrough moments to see real bodies. Everyone's got cellulite, even like skinny people. And just seeing people like not like they felt safe in kind of Burning Man style, like whatever. Whatever outfit or costume or not they were wearing. And it's just really beautiful to have that community and safety and visibility all in one. And so that was definitely a big transformation moment for sure.
Yeah, I love that you also take the feminist perspective on it and ask those deeper questions about it, right? Are we just self-objectifying ourselves? And I think Yeah, there are two things as you were saying that I was thinking, well, on the one hand, the whole idea that sex sells and that has been used against women and their sexuality has been used to sell things that men benefit from most of the time.
Mhm.
So there is a certain amount of like reclamation in saying, well, yes, I will use this to sell, but it's for me.
Yeah.
And I think there's that aspect to it. But then more than that, I think the part that really appeals to me is, as you were saying, like seeing these different bodies, the real bodies, it can be so activating for us. And we're like right now, thankfully, we're beginning to see that more and more and more on social media in advertising campaigns. But a few years ago, you didn't see anybody that wasn't like white and super skinny and able-bodied in anything that was deemed or would be like attractive, like something that would be seductive to try and entice you to sell, just to sell something. And so I think that's also part of the work is like, for me, part of the power of this is knowing that, playing my role as well in normalizing, yeah, okay, I'm going to be sexy and be seen in that, but I'm going to be seen in who I really am and who I fully am. And I'm not going to just show the photos that show my body from the best angle. And that's been a whole thing on its own. It's like, when I take a photo, am I going to post that one? The one where you can see, the fat rolls and the cellulite, or I'm going to choose the one that is like most pleasing in terms of what I've been conditioned with. And so, yeah, I do try to also bring that consciousness into my work, but it's a challenge. It's an ongoing like journey for me as well.
Yeah, it makes me think of, in Fearless Feminine, we do the real and raw. And I think that that is so powerful. And I can say one of the things I love most about my partner is that, I mean, I can be like snoring or, post baby, like cross or, like throwing up or something. And he is equally, and well, maybe not equally, but yeah, equally. That's just him. I don't know. He loves me like in all forms. And
Yeah.
it's like very empowering. And so I feel a lot of times we can't even do that for ourselves, much less like show other people. And so for all of you like coaches, healers, and change makers out there who are showing like the real and raw, the messy stuff, the ugly stuff, like I find that so freaking refreshing. It makes me think of Crystal Langman, who's been on the podcast and has been one of my coaches. She'll do like a really sexy one, and then she'll pull it back and show you like the mess right behind her. I'm like, yes, like this picture is so perfect and it's zoomed in, and I think that's such a great analogy for, what do we zoom in on? That's like an objectification thing, like people are very like self-critical. If you ever looked in the mirror, and you're picking your eyebrows or whatever, you're like, oh my God, I can see every little thing.
See everything.
Because we're zoomed in, right? But it's like to zoom out, and see the big picture. And I think that's what's so great about coaching. That the coach really helps you like zoom out and see you in your magnificence. And that's what was so great about having you on Fearless Feminine and to be part of your initiation. Like, I think one thing we have in common is we draw these like really amazing, powerful women to us. And that has been the great pleasure and honor of coaching, is to just connect worldwide. I mean, literally we're on different bits of the world.
Now I was in Vietnam, now in South Africa, and we're still connected.
Oh, you're back in South Africa.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I just came back a few months ago, 3 or 4 months ago. Yeah, so that's been a whole journey of its own.
I've been a couple circles on it.
Yeah, it's been, that's also brought up its own for healing for me within myself. But yeah, I love what you just shared as well about Crystal, as she shows, the pretty and then the messy. And even in her work, she'll often post like a very high glamour shot because that's her whole thing, right? The cleavage, then that's like so beautiful. And then her next post will be like no makeup in her pajamas with the kids in the background. And I think, as you said, like that's magnetic, where someone can show all sides of themselves. And as much as that's true on social media and out in the world, it's also very much true in the bed. And that it's like we think to be attractive, to be sexually appealing, whatever, we need to be these like perfect versions of ourselves. And that can hold you back so much, right? In the moment, like in terms of your pleasure. Because I know for myself, I would always position myself like to not create like a belly roll or like to try and arch my back or whatever to try to look better. But that completely takes you out of the moment and out of your pleasure. And what it realizes, if you're with someone, and as you mentioned with your husband, like someone who loves you from all angles, from, real and raw and messy and true, it's so empowering, and it's actually so much more magnetic to be fully in your body, fully in your power, in your pleasure, and to not care about any of that other stuff. Because that's what actually creates like powerful sexual energy between you and that sense of like deep intimacy and connection.
How we were talking about on the last podcast, and this is something I've said to clients over and over again, is that it's not how you look, it's how you feel. And so when we're overly concerned with the angle and how we look in our body, then we are self-objectifying, like we're making ourselves an object. And an object, by definition, this is the breakthrough moment, doesn't have any feelings, right? I could slam the phone down and it might break, but like it doesn't feel, as far as we know.
That bugs me now.
So that's the difference, And so like to be embodied, sometimes I'll ask it, let's end on that. What is your definition of embodiment? Because I've asked several embodiment experts that, and I think that it's like a container. You did a reel on that one time, and I thought that was so brilliant. I'm like, embodiment, what is that really? And why is it so important? So I'll turn that over.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I'm remembering that reel that you're speaking about that I did about what is a container? Why are all these coaches speaking about containers? What is that? But yeah, I really do think that's I love what you just said, that breakthrough moment, right? An object. And to not then self-objectify ourselves, as you were saying, what is the antidote to that? It's embodiment. It's feeling. It's being present. It's actually being aware of your internal experience more than external appearances. And that's really like where both the pleasure and the power lie. So good.
Like feeling that's the audiogram. I don't know. Just like a powerful little moment there. So we'll definitely have you back on the podcast, because we can really
talk about so much.
All these things that I feel like we went so deep, but like we also just scratched the surface of all the different things we could talk about together. So tell us, I know you're focused on one-on-one, as am I. So, come check us out. Like, your pussy will thank you, right?
Yeah, absolutely. She will. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm currently just focusing on one-on-one, and I actually have one spot that's just opened up. So if anybody would like to claim that, and really my work is, what I've realized recently is there are all these beautiful pieces to my work, and I've obviously started very much focused on like the realm of sexual empowerment. But when I work with my clients, most of the time, what I'm actually helping them do is use pleasure and intuition, and then some aspects of, trauma healing, but essentially to get whatever it is that they want, not necessarily just, a better sex life. I think that came through in some of our work with regards to like the visibility and the boundaries and all of that. But that's really the through line in all my work is desire. What do you desire? And then using pleasure, your intuition, your divinity to actually create that and manifest that, both from the spiritual perspective, but as well as from like the actual practical perspective as well. So if that's something if there's something you want, come to me and I'll help you get it.
Yeah. So like pussy life coaching. I'm like,
yeah, exactly.
TM, not for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Funny, because I've kind of pivoted myself from thinking about being like more a business coach, like a holistic business coach and women's empowerment coach, into more, I wish there wasn't the stigma around life coaching, and I think that's why people like coach or whatever. But I was realizing like that really is my brilliance, and it is for you too.
That's so funny. That's literally what I've been thinking about.
That's what we all want, is to have the life that we desire, and maybe a business is just one piece of that, or a relationship is just a piece of that, but to do like the whole thing, the big picture stuff, is so powerful. So.
Yeah. And using the power, the gifts and the powerful tools that we have, which are in many ways there are very big similarities between our tools, your spirituality, manifestation, trauma work. There's like this beautiful array of tools that we get to use, but essentially it is to help people step into a life that's it. So life coach.
Yeah, and that was part of my story. Like I've had the successful business, or I had the child, or I found the partner, I, got the dream house, and they were all wonderful. And I'm very like thankful and grateful for that. And, if the result is all that it's about, it's like very short lived, and then you're on to the next thing, because we're all expensive creatures. Right. And so I think really like savoring, being present, being like embodied in the life that you love, and just being like super fucking unapologetic about going for what you want, is huge.
Yeah.
So tell us, like, where do we find you? Everybody needs to sign up for one-on-one right away.
Yeah, I am mostly on Instagram. That's where I am. So Liane_Elle_coaching, but I'm sure you'll put it in the notes. And on Facebook, it's just Liane. I'm mostly on Instagram, but you can find me on Facebook too. And yeah, I'm starting to make a lot of reels over there in a way that feels really good and pleasurable to me. And I'm having fun with that. So you can find me on there. I also write really long Instagram captions because I have a lot to say and the words just fall out, just channel through. And yeah, for anyone who signs up for the one-on-one spot that I have before the end of the year, you'll also get a half VIP day where we'll really be working on like your desires for 2022. But even that, I'm like, it's not about 2022, it's about your life, and really doing like a very deep dive into that so that we can come up with very, very like desire-led direction for the next phase of your life. So that's a bonus to get if you sign up the side of the year spot.
That's so yummy. I'm so excited for you and your offering. And thank you so much for coming on the pod. We had it's early morning for you, and I think it's late night for you, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it was always like a different time of day, but this is a good time actually. So, but I know the West Coast, I struggle with the West Coast, but the East Coast is way better for timing.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your story. And I think it's just powerfully activating that we don't have to be defined by our religion, by our circumstances, by our family, our culture. If we don't want to be, we should do that. Where we can just totally shift the narrative, which I think is what the matriarchy is all about. So thanks everyone for watching Divine Feminine Revolution. Go check out my YouTube channel and come see us for one-on-one. We'll see everybody next time. Have a great day. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Divine Feminine Revolution podcast. Make sure to subscribe and leave a 5-star review. Want to keep the conversation flowing? Find us on Facebook at the Divine Feminine Revolution Facebook group, where revolutionary women gather to listen to their hearts, monetize their gifts, and change the world.